She sneered, "If you can't even buy your girlfriend an Audi, you'll never be on my level. Enjoy your small life." I rose, slipped on my coat, and calmly said, "You're right." Then I walked away. A month later, the courthouse called me. She looked at something I'd poured 2 weeks of my soul into, and laughed. Loud enough for the entire table to hear. That was the moment I realized I'd been trying to polish something that was never going to shine. My name is Daniel Reyes. I'm 31 years old, and I've been a jeweler for over a decade. Not the kind you find in a luxury mall with marble floors and velvet-gloved staff. I own a small workshop on a quiet street downtown, where the afternoon sunlight hits the glass just right and silver dust never fully leaves your clothes. I grew up modestly. My mom was a seamstress. My dad was a mechanic. They didn't leave me money, they left me something better. They taught me that skill is its own kind of wealth. The kind no one can take from you. I learned early that you can make something breathtaking out of what the world throws away. Maybe that's why I fell in love with metal. It's stubborn, just like people. It needs heat and pressure before it shines. 2 years before all of this, I met Claire Morrow at a charity gala I wasn't even supposed to be at. A friend who runs a catering company needed help setting up, so I went. Claire walked in wearing a crimson dress, laughing like the whole room had been built for her entertainment. When she found out I was a jeweler, her eyes lit up. "An artist with rough hands," she said. "That's rare." We started dating shortly after. She'd come by my workshop in the evenings and watch me shape molten silver into something delicate. She said she loved the smell of polish and fire. I made her a bracelet early on. She wore it every single day. Back then she used to say, "I love that your world is simple, Daniel. It makes everything feel real." I held onto those words longer than I should have. Because people change. Or maybe they just remember who they always wanted to be. Her father owned a luxury import company. Cars, watches, fragrances, the kind of business that sells the idea of class more than anything real. When Claire got promoted into a management role, something shifted. New clothes. New friends. New dinners where every story started with a brand name. At first, I didn't mind. She had her circle. I had mine. But I started noticing the way she looked at me changing. Not with warmth, with quiet calculation. "Why don't you open a real store instead of that little studio? You should hire a PR firm. You're talented, Daniel, but no one will know if you don't act the part." Her words stung, not because they were loud, but because they were so casual. Like she'd already made her decision about me and was just waiting for me to catch up. Her friends were even worse. The kind of people who treat genuine curiosity like an act of charity. "So you make jewelry with your hands? That's adorable. We have a designer in Milan who handles all our custom pieces." I smiled through all of it. Claire would squeeze my hand and say, "Don't take it personally, babe. They don't mean it." But the truth was, she didn't defend me because she agreed with them. By our second year, we were living side by side rather than together. She spent weekends at rooftop lounges and wine tastings, networking with people who introduced themselves by what they drove. I spent mine bent over a workbench, fixing heirloom rings for elderly couples who still believed in promises. She came home smelling like champagne and designer perfume. I smelled like metal and time. Still, I loved her. Or maybe I loved the version of her I'd met at that gala. The one who found beauty in rough hands. Then the comments got sharper. "When we get married, we'll need to get you a proper car. Daniel, you should start dressing like your work costs something. You can't live paycheck to paycheck forever. Not if we want a future." She said we, but she meant you. I wasn't struggling. I made enough to live comfortably, save, and dream. But in Claire's world, comfortable wasn't success. It was failure wearing a content smile. Still, I wanted to believe we could meet somewhere in the middle. So when our second anniversary arrived, I decided to remind her of who we were before the noise. Before luxury blurred everything that used to matter. I spent 2 weeks crafting something completely personal, a silver necklace with twin wings meeting at a single ruby at the center. 2 halves of one piece. Hers and mine. She had no idea how many late nights I stayed at the bench. How many times I burned my fingers smoothing every curve. How often I scrapped the whole design and started from zero just to get it perfect. I thought it might bring her back to the simplicity she once said she loved. But maybe that version of her had only ever existed in my memory. Our anniversary fell on a Friday night. Claire wanted to celebrate properly, which in her language meant a reservation at a rooftop restaurant with a view of the city, champagne on arrival, and a valet at the curb. I wore my best suit. I brought the velvet box. I rehearsed what I'd say when I gave it to her. But when we arrived, I realized quickly, this wasn't our night. It was hers. 5 of her friends were already seated, laughing loud enough for the whole terrace to hear. One of them, Rachel, looked up with a wide grin. There's the man of the hour. Claire kissed my cheek. Surprise. I thought it would be fun to celebrate with everyone. Everyone. Meaning her polished, performative circle who treated people like accessories. I smiled and tried to be gracious. I'd come to celebrate her, after all. I ordered wine, listened to their chatter about designer vacations, art auctions, and new cars. Claire fit perfectly among them, confident, magnetic, luminous. I sat there feeling like a visitor in a country where I didn't speak the language. When the main course arrived, I decided it was time. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the velvet box, and set it gently on the table. The noise dimmed. Claire looked at it. Oh, what's this? I smiled. A gift. She raised an eyebrow. Her friends leaned in. Rachel whispered, "Oh my God, is this it?" I opened the box. The silver necklace shimmered under the warm restaurant lights, twin wings joined at the center by a ruby the color of a sunset. It glowed like something alive. "I made this for you," I said quietly. 2 wings, one for each year we've been together. One for you. One for me. For just a moment, she was silent. Then she laughed. Not softly. Not out of surprise. The loud kind. The kind that pulls attention from surrounding tables. "Oh, Daniel," she said, shaking her head. "You're adorable." Her friends exchanged glances. One of them said politely, "It's beautiful. Did you make it yourself?" "Of course," Claire grinned. "He makes everything himself." More laughter. Soft ripples spreading across the table, like she'd just told a charming little joke. "You know," she continued, swirling her wineglass, "most guys I know give their girlfriends Audis or Cartier bracelets." She paused for effect. But not Daniel. The waiter standing nearby froze, unsure whether to serve dessert or simply disappear. Then came the line. "Honestly, if you can't even afford an Audi as a gift, you'll never be on my level. Stay here and enjoy your small life, okay?" Her friends laughed again. Softer this time. Even they knew she'd crossed something. But Claire held her smile, swirling her glass like she'd just made a perfectly reasonable point. I looked at her. Really looked at her. The shimmer of her earrings. The practiced smile. The way she held that glass like it was proof she belonged somewhere I didn't. And something inside me, something I'd been carefully holding together for 2 years, simply stopped. I closed the velvet box gently. Pushed it toward her. Stood up. Put on my coat. "Daniel, what are you doing?" "What you told me to," I said quietly. "Enjoying my small life." I placed cash on the table for my meal. And I walked out without looking back. By the way, if you're still with me at this point, make sure you hit subscribe. Because I promise you, the stories I share here only get more unbelievable from here. The night air outside hit me like cold water, sharp and honest. I walked 3 blocks before I realized my hands were shaking. Not from anger. From clarity. My phone lit up behind me. "Daniel, come back. You're embarrassing me in front of my friends." Then, "Fine. Stay gone if you want. I don't need a man who can't keep up." I didn't reply to a single message. When I got home, I placed the necklace box on my workbench and sat staring at it for a long time. The ruby caught the faint light from my desk lamp, glowing like something still breathing. For 2 years, I'd bent myself trying to make us fit. Smoothing edges. Absorbing comments. Shrinking myself to fit inside her world. But some metals simply don't bond, no matter how much heat you apply. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without a weight on my chest. I didn't know it yet, but that silence wasn't emptiness. It was freedom. Exactly 1 month later, I was at my bench polishing a wedding band when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Reyes, this is Officer Lang from the county courthouse. Are you available to answer a few questions regarding a Miss Claire Morrow? I thought I'd misheard. Claire? What about her? There's an active investigation involving her family's company, Morrow Holdings. Your name appeared in several financial records connected to her personal accounts. We're verifying the legitimacy of those connections. My stomach dropped. What kind of connections? Jewelry invoices. Transactions listed under Dye's Studio. Does that sound familiar? It did. Except, those invoices weren't mine. I didn't have a company by that name. Claire had never purchased anything from my workshop. The officer confirmed what I already suspected. Someone had used my name to file fraudulent invoices, likely to disguise the movement of funds. I came in the next morning with every document I had. Tax filings. Receipts. Bank statements. The investigator looked through everything, then looked up at me over his reading glasses. You're clean, Mr. Reyes. Looks like your name was borrowed without your knowledge. I signed my statement and walked out into the daylight. But as I stood on those courthouse steps, one thought kept circling. She'd used me. My name, the one she'd once decided was too small to matter, had been useful to her after all. 2 days later, the story was everywhere. Morrow Holdings under federal investigation for fraud and embezzlement. CEO and daughter named in multi-million-dollar scheme. Assets frozen pending trial. In every photograph, Claire was leaving courthouses in beige coats and dark sunglasses, the confidence completely gone from her posture. The same crowd she'd spent years performing for was now watching her collapse. And her white Audi, the symbol of everything she'd used to measure worth, had been impounded as evidence. I didn't feel satisfaction. I just felt done. That night, I went back to my workbench. I hadn't sketched anything new since the breakup. But something in me stirred, not anger, not revenge. Just clarity, finally settling into something useful. I opened my sketchbook and drew a familiar design. 2 wings, fractured down the middle. The ruby, split in half. I called it the Fall of Vanity. It was the most personal thing I'd ever created. Every detail carried a memory. Her laughter. The sting of that dinner. The quiet that came after she was gone. I submitted it to a regional jewelry showcase, not chasing fame. Just chasing closure. A few weeks later, a private collector in New York called me. Her voice was calm, refined, the kind of person who commands attention without demanding it. I saw your piece online, she said. It's stunning. What inspired it? I hesitated, then said simply, a lesson. She laughed softly. That's rare in art, lessons that don't sound bitter. Within a month, the Fall of Vanity collection debuted in a boutique gallery in Manhattan. Photos circulated. Orders came in faster than I could fill them. My little workshop suddenly had a wait list. And somewhere between late nights at the bench and early morning deliveries, I understood something Claire had accidentally taught me. She'd been right about one thing. I wasn't on her level. I'd already outgrown it. The gallery opening felt nothing like the world I used to dread. No hollow compliments. No champagne performances. Just quiet reverence. People stood in front of my pieces whispering about texture and light, asking about the emotion behind each design. When the curtain pulled away from the Fall of Vanity, the entire room went still. A woman in a black gown turned to me and said softly, "It feels like a confession." I smiled. Maybe it is. Some stories live better in metal and fire than they ever could in words. The collection sold out in weeks. A magazine interviewed me about emotional craftsmanship, how heartbreak can reshape art. It sounded poetic when they published it. To me, it was just survival. I moved into a larger studio. Brighter. Quieter. Still completely mine. My mother cried when she saw my name in print. My father just nodded and said, "Gold shines, but silver lasts." As always, he was right. Life had gone quiet again. Not empty, peaceful. The kind of peace you stop appreciating until you've lived without it. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. Daniel. It's me. Her voice stopped me cold for half a breath. Claire. But she sounded different. Slower. Fragile. Like someone who had been running from herself for a very long time and finally, exhausted, stopped. "I saw your work in the gallery feature," she said. "It's beautiful." "Thank you." A long pause. Then, barely above a whisper, "I wanted to call and apologize. For everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I just—" Her voice broke. "I lost everything, Daniel. The house, the cars, the company. My dad is still in court. I'm living back home now." She stopped, collected herself, then said something I hadn't expected. "I keep thinking about that night at the restaurant. When everything fell apart around me, I kept hearing those 2 words you said when you walked out. You're right. You walked away like it cost you nothing," she whispered. "And I laughed like it meant nothing. But when the world I built started crumbling, all I could think was, you were right. I was the one living small." There it was. The thing I'd once ached to hear. And standing in my quiet workshop, surrounded by silver dust and afternoon light, I felt nothing but stillness. I looked at the platinum band I was polishing, a simple, humble ring for a couple who'd saved for months to afford it. Real love. Unhurried love. "I hope you find peace, Claire," I said gently. "I already have." We said goodbye. For real, this time. After she hung up, I sat quietly for a while, listening to the low hum of the polishing wheel. Outside, sunlight filtered through the studio window, catching dust particles in the air and turning them gold. Closure, I realized, doesn't come from revenge. It doesn't come from watching someone fall, or from being proven right, or from any moment of triumph you imagined in the dark. It comes from quiet. From finally letting go of something you tried too hard to fix. Weeks later, my apprentice, a young artist named Eli, looked up from his workbench and asked me, "Mr. Reyes, how do you know when a piece is finished?" I thought for a moment, then smiled. When it stops asking to be fixed. That night, I stayed late shaping a new pendant. 2 wings again. Same shape. Same symmetry. But this time, the ruby at the center wasn't split. It wasn't fractured. It was whole. I called it grace. Claire had built her life on reflections. All surface, all shine, no substance. The moment truth touched it, it shattered. Mine was built slowly, imperfectly, with hands that bore the scars of the work. And it endured. People talk about levels like they're measured in cars, titles, and numbers on a screen. But standing in my workshop with silver dust on my hands and sunlight on my face, I finally understood what she never did. You don't rise by climbing someone else's ladder. You rise when you build your own. So I want to ask you something genuinely. Have you ever given someone everything you had, only to have them make you feel like it wasn't enough? What did you do? How did you find your way back to yourself? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know.